Hello, I'm Hannah Bushbaum, co-founder of the W Source. You're listening to the WWisdom series. The W Source is an exclusive network of female professionals and service providers who are interested in growing their referral network and their businesses. The Wisdom series is a forum to hear from the experts within our membership. To learn more about how you can benefit from connecting with professional women across the nation, visit thewsource.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to be sharing this wisdom series with you today. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Hannah Bushbaum, co-founder of the W Source, and we are talking all things real estate with Alison Duboff today. And I just appreciate so much that she's willing to join us from our Manhattan Beach, California chapter. I know we have chapters nationwide, but everybody in every demographic with every part of the United States is talking about what is going on with real estate. And we're so happy to have Alison, who not only works in local markets in California, but is actually an international real estate agent, realtor for us within our chapter. Alison, thanks so much for joining us today.
So very happy to be here and incredibly happy to talk about my big passion, which is all things real estate. Some people say that I am locally grown, but globally known. And I'd love to talk with you today a little bit about real estate around the world, specifically more in California, and the emotions and the mechanics behind transactions for buyers, sellers, and investors. But I think a great way to start out is to run this small little video about the emotions surrounding real estate. Take it away.
Alison Duboff here. I want to read you a paragraph from my recent profile in South Bay magazine. So it asks me how I would describe my profession. I shall read this quote from 1000 Watt Consulting, and the author is Mark Davison. Buying and selling a home is not just complex. It consumes the totality of what it is to be a human being. Rationality, emotion, intuition, logic, loss, joy. It's the crock pot of psychic stew that simmers during a transaction, and it requires a skilled hand to handle the heat. Let me be that skilled hand to handle the spiciest of your real estate transactions. I'm Alison Duboff, and I approve this message.
Wow, that was a great video. You must have glowing skin all the time. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, and we're glad to hear that great quote. Where did you find that quote?
It's by a company called 1000 Watt Consulting, and they are a real estate company, and they do amazing things. They really do. Like them a lot.
That's awesome. You mentioned 3 segments of the market, and I think anyone listening to this owns a home or has owned a home or knows someone investing in real estate. Which of the 3 would you like to start out with?
My favorite, which are buyers. I started in the industry about 15 years ago, and it was a very challenging market. And so buyers were my main source of business. And it is an emotional journey for a first-time buyer, an investor. But I have a funny story to tell you about one transaction in particular. So buyers come in all size, shapes, like, every client that you could possibly have. But engineers are always the ones that are challenging. And so I was referred to an engineering couple, husband and wife, both engineers, so double duo. And they really had a hard time getting on a parallel path, is what they told me. They were some of the most challenging clients I ever had just to get on the same page to start the search process. Fast forward, coming to the fun part, we identify a property, beautiful property in Palos Verdes, ocean views, just gorgeous. And they're nervous. They're first-time buyers. They're expecting their 3rd child. Timing is an issue. And this is at the end of the year. Well, we do our first inspection. Then we have a termite inspection, and this is in the winter. And we walk into the house, and there is a major flood. Water is pouring down from everywhere, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is not going to end well. And as we went further into the whole process, there was major joist, what supports some of the patios, damage, and there were issues galore with this property. The agent on the other side representing the seller was very good to work with. And believe it or not, my most challenging people became the easiest buyers to work with. And we closed escrow, not necessarily on time, but I was able to negotiate with the seller for the repairs and whatnot. And if you go back to that little video, the process is a crock pot of a psychic stew. It really, really is. And it requires a steady hand to handle the heat. And so I like to think of myself as that steady hand. So that's my buyer story, Hannah.
Wow, Allison, that's a great story. I can't imagine coming into a house for the first time and having water coming out of the walls. That just is a visual that I think any person could be terrified of. Water is just dangerous. I know, Allison, you and I are geographically pretty close together in California, and I keep hearing from people it's a seller's market. How as a buyer do you become attractive in this environment? Like, how do you find a way to get your offer in? Talk to us with what your ways of negotiating to help buyers really do get the place of their dreams during this market.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with starting with choosing the right agent. And it's a multifaceted answer to that, because you want an agent who has good relationships with the other realtors. Because as we know, people like to work with people they like and trust. So your reputation is paramount. Then also you need to listen to the guidance of your realtor because they know the market. For example, I'll give you a story. There is, again, very limited inventory, and wrote an offer on a stigmatized property. And it's not important to get into that now, but basically it was a stigmatized property, but it had a lot of interest. And there were 11 offers. So I talked to my buyer and I said, look, we need to implement an escalation clause, which is something that you do when you offer X amount of money more than the highest bidder, and there's lots of important language that needs to go into that, with a cap. So for buyers who are really struggling, we got that property for $2,000 only more than the highest bidder. Can you imagine how that other bidder felt losing the property for $2,000? So your answer is listen to your agent and follow their guidance. We know what we're doing. We really do. That's why a good agent, you have to have a good agent.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, that's a fairly easy test to take. It's not an easy career to be good in. And so I think that's why people like Alison and even Alison's network of other realtors that she can connect with the same levels of experience and understanding are really key.
One other little hint that a lot of buyers don't necessarily believe in is the love letter. The love letter is so important to the seller because most likely they bought their home with full of emotion, and to give it on and pass it on to the next person, they kind of want to know that they have a good feeling about that next buyer who's going to be living in their home where they built so many memories.
That's great. I like that idea. What's the next section that we should talk about? We've got sellers and investors left.
Let's talk about sellers.
Great.
So sellers are a bit more challenging. They expect a lot more, sometimes unrealistically. And so we have to listen to the language of our sellers. We want to correspond with them in the language that they want. And you have to ask the question, do they prefer text? Do they prefer email? Do they prefer Zoom? And in this time of coronavirus, if you are interviewing a realtor for representation, you want to make sure that they know the up-to-minute laws and rules about coronavirus, because it is an uncharted territory of litigiousness, shall we say, that is not yet experienced. So sellers are fun. I do love sellers. You can bring out your more creative side because we can do drone videography and fun videos, walkthroughs, and this and that. But sellers, you are more challenging because you have high expectations, which is, of course, normal. But again, interview the realtors. You want it to be a good fit. It's like a pair of boots. You want it to feel right, look right, and to act right.
That's great. You had a good story for a buyer experience. Do you have a good story for a seller that perhaps really took you through the ringer?
Yes. Uh, Again, real estate sadly is very litigious. And my job is not only to sell your home the fastest time possible for the most money and the best terms that suit your lifestyle and your needs, but also to protect you legally. You know, as your advocate, I need to guide you. So I had a seller who had interior cameras, and you have to have a little notice printed out and tell people that you may be filmed. And they would say, we don't need that because we're always going to turn it off. But then afterwards, they would say things like, oh, I can't believe that realtor and their client, they didn't put booties on. And I'm like, oh my gosh, please. So as a seller's representation, we're here to protect you, not just sell your home.
That's really interesting. One of the questions we got through the chat box was a lot of the WSource chapters that we're listening in have a realtor or are connecting with them, but sometimes it can be awkward to displace a friend or a neighbor who maybe is a part-time realtor or has a relationship. I think everybody knows a realtor, but then there's difference between those that do it professionally like yourselves and those that maybe got the license on the side. What are some warning signs that perhaps the realtor isn't quite a good fit for sellers?
Well, I can tell you, and probably Hannah, even in your business, when I meet a buyer and they tell me that they have a lender who's a friend or a relative, how it doesn't work, I think psychologically, is that a friend or a relative doesn't feel that they need to earn your business. And so therefore they tend to be a little bit more lax and they don't go through the hoops. But when we're working, we want our clients for life, for the generations. And so a good realtor will give your all, but you might notice that the response time isn't really up to scruff. Maybe that you are finding listings on your own that why didn't your realtor give it to you? It'll be very easy to see the signs, and it's not an easy path to tell your friend or relative that you don't want to work with them. But you can just say, hey, please understand this is a humongous financial commitment, and I want us to stay friends. We're going to be family. Let me just take this out and set it aside and take care of what I need to take care of.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice way to say it. I had to unfortunately fire a client, not to sidebar or steal any of your thunder, but I used similar language, which was, look, I don't want to duck in the grocery store when I see you at the other side of the aisle. I want us to be friends no matter what, and this isn't working. You're not happy. I'm not happy. Let's take this business transaction out of our relationship and find a new way. And if you can find a way to make that right to them, whether it's referring a different client or something else, I think that's a way to do it.
Can I have a couple more words of wisdom, takeaways?
Please.
All right. If you meet a realtor who wants to, in California, represent you as a buyer and a seller, don't do it. That is just litigiousness waiting to happen. So have a realtor as a buyer, have a separate realtor as a seller. Don't do dual agency. I've done it once only in 15 years out of necessity. The next thing is once the world opens up again in California, where I am, and I'm able to do open houses, I want to give buyers the most important information about open houses. The sign in the yard might not be the realtor that is inside the house. And people sometimes want to go directly to the listing agent. That person may not be the listing agent. Look at the name on the sign, ask the person in the house if they are the listing agent. Also, if you're considering selling and you want to go with Mr. Uber successful of the universe who has 500 signs all over town, be careful because you may engage him or her and you most likely will not get him or her, but a staff of minions who aren't there to take you and guide you through this toxic psychic stew.
Well, and to your point, if they do have that many listings, chances are that maybe you're not the highest priced deal that they're dealing with, and maybe not the top priority. So understanding, where do you fall in the capital stack of importance as well.
Our
Great.
goal is to serve our clients, and I tell my clients, lean on me. I have done staging myself, emptied garbage, cleaned floors. You want someone who cares about you and your transaction as much as they do their commission.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so we've got one segment of the market left, investors. Take it away.
All right, investors. Investors come in all shapes and sizes. You can have the mom and pop who own a single family home and want to buy a unit so that they can have this income for their retirement. It is such a path to home ownership. And this is a story that will help illuminate this idea of increasing your wealth through real estate. I had a client, they thought they were going to only be able to rent. I introduced them to a lender. They bought a place in El Segundo. Then they grew their equity. They wanted to keep it, rent it, but it afforded them the opportunity to buy another home, and then that would offset their payment on their new home. Every budget you can look into owning income property, not just multi-unit apartment buildings, but you can buy a small little duplex or a single family home, rent it out. There's many, many options, and it doesn't have to be in your neighborhood. It could be anywhere. Again, it could be even in Europe.
That's super exciting. One thing that's come across as a question that I've gotten from clients, and I'm curious your thoughts, without going political, which is of course not anything we're going today, there is little bits of birdies saying that the elimination of the 1031 exchange, which maybe you could explain how that works for investors, may come down the pipe. Do you have any clarity on that? It may just be too new, but if you could explain what that is and then what you're hearing.
Well, the up-to-date news I am not hip to at this moment, but I just completed a 1031 with one of my listings. The buyer was a 1031, but basically you have an income property and you want to sell it and you want to have some relief from the tax burden that you would pay. And so you roll those proceeds into a new property. And after a few years, you can move into that property after it being a rental property. The new changes, I would want to do some more deep digging to give the most precise information. Same as Prop 19. It's very deep and detailed, and I can provide you with information for California Proposition 19.
That's great. Yeah, and so much is changing so quickly. Again, if you're listening to the recording, that doesn't mean this information is stale. It just means that you've got to find someone like Alison who does do the research as soon as it's available, and through her associations and her various organizations can get you the right information that you need at the right time.
And also, Hannah, one last thing is that people in California don't realize that once or twice a year, the contract changes. There are new forms added, new language added. Some forms are taken away. And being with a large brokerage like RE/MAX, because I want to give RE/MAX a plug, we have top-notch legal guidance, and they're on top of us because it makes a difference in your offers and your listings if you're not aware of what is actually happening on an annual or biannual basis. You really want to work with someone who knows their stuff.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts for our listeners?
Just if you know anybody in California or abroad, I'm here to serve. Lean on me.
That's great. Before we go, I'd love to hear a little bit about your chapter and the experience. For those of you that don't know, typically I'm a female financial advisor, and typically the chapters were originally started for financial advisors to be the chapter head of the group. Alison was brave enough to take the plunge and be the first non-financial advisor to start a group. And I really appreciate that because she's paved the way for our now Colorado Springs chapter, who's led by a realtor, and a couple other chapters coming down the pipe who saw the value of the network, but didn't quite fit the exact mold that I had originally designed the company for. And so, Alison, I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience while we've got about 5 minutes left on the clock.
Well, I introduced it. I was asked to be a keynote speaker at the Manhattan Beach Chamber of Commerce, and I announced my W source and how excited and thrilled I was to be supporting women. And there was an overwhelming response, and we quickly got set up, and we are to date small, but we are very mighty. I have to say that on one hand, the pandemic helps a lot because we can connect with people all over the world and the country. And we can have one-on-ones quite easily, but we do miss that interaction, that physicality. And I also am very sad that I missed the happy hour the other day. Sorry about that. But no, we are small, but we are mighty, and we had a great success in our giving November. the spotlight. It's fantastic. We are a group of committed women, and we are dedicated to each other, to helping each other grow their businesses and to illuminate other women to the W source. It's a fantastic organization, and hats off to you for starting it, Hannah.
Well, I don't take any credit. Thank you, Alison, for sharing your wisdom with us today. It is not taken lightly. If you are thinking anything real estate and have a question for Alison, do not hesitate to email her. Her contact information will flash on the screen in just a minute, or email us at info@thewsource. If you're a female realtor in another community and you just want to know more about how to refer business back and forth or share wisdom, please connect with us or Alison. And with that, I'll leave you today. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And thank you so much, Alison, for being with us today.
My heartfelt pleasure.